Righto, I think it's 7 o'clock. Shall we start?
Yeah, let's do that. Good evening, everybody, and thanks for joining us this evening. Yet another Zoom meeting. Hopefully this is going to be a bit more entertaining than most of the Zoom meetings I've been recently. I hope you found somewhere cool to join from. And how much cooler is it than to meet with like-minded people and to talk about things we love to do in the best of times. My name's Jeff Cox. I'm a great friend of Heather Dawe, who is going to be doing most of the talking tonight. She's just asked me if I'll do a short introduction to her, so I hope I'm not going to embarrass her too in this. I first encountered Heather as a runner and an artist. I'm a runner myself, and I'd come across her at various fell races, and also as an artist, I'd seen her art shown at various places. I then found out she was a writer and a cyclist. It's recently I found out she's also a data scientist. I know she's a great mother. She's, like, to summarize, she's that girl in your class that makes everybody really jealous. This evening, Heather's going to be here speaking to you in the role of writer, cyclist, and artist. What she's going to be talking about is the book A Cycling Year, an illustrated journal of a year's bicycle rides in Yorkshire. She's going to be speaking for about 40-45 minutes. If you have any questions during that time, I'm going to be collecting the questions. So if you can just type them into the Q&A box or the chat box at the bottom of your screen, I'll pick them up and put them to Heather later. Can you make sure that your microphones are muted? It's the usual discipline for these meetings. And Heather's going to be giving you some information at the end about where to acquire a copy of the book, which I'm sure you'll want to do. So over to you, Heather.
Great. Thanks very much, Jeff. So I'll crack on. This is the first. I've done a few work webinars recently. I think I spend most of my working life on Zoom, but this is the first talk. I don't know, in some ways I'd rather call it a book talk than a webinar. The first webinar I've done about my writing and my art, and cycling and anything sort of like things I like to do outside of work. So hopefully it's going to be a more enjoyable experience than the normal webinars, although I must admit I'm a bit nervous, but we'll see how it goes. So this is, as Jeff said, I'm going to talk for about 40 minutes about my book. It's sort of combination of, but I should show you, I know Jeff's already shown you a copy, but here you go. Sort of a combination of things, really. So I live in Wharfedale, in Otley in Wharfedale, in West Yorkshire. And this is a map of Wharfedale. I think this is a 1938 edition of the Bartholomew's map of Wharfedale. And I picked this up in a flea market in Hawes in the Central Dales. Oh, goodness me, probably about 15 years ago now, after a particularly wet mountain bike ride on the trails around Hawes. And it sort of languished on a bookshelf for some years. And then about 8 years ago, actually, because it was when my first daughter was very young, I got it framed and I hung it on my wall at home. And since then, it's formed the basis for much of my sort of inspiration for my local rides. And also, and a lot of the time when I'm riding my bike these days, I'm not racing anywhere near as much as I used to. A lot of the, I still very much love riding my bike, but a lot of the time I spend now is sort of getting inspiration for writing and painting. And some of the time I spend at home afterwards, I spend time painting and writing about my journeys. And A Cycling Year was kind of formed from that, really. Formed from a sort of combination of loving cycling around Wharfedale and beyond. And then, the sort of writing about it and painting about things. So that's sort of the inspiration for the book, but also the inspiration came from other people, other artists and writers. And I touch on those through the talk today. So A Cycling Year is just that. It's 12 chapters to the book, and each chapter's a month, and each chapter is also a bike ride. So I'm going to go through every ride I did, and some I won't dwell on so much. Others I'll spend a bit more time on. talking about the inspiration and sort of things I did, and sort of thought about as I was doing the bike rides, as I was sort of, these days I think it's as much about the anticipation of riding my bike as riding my bike. I don't, I've got a young family, I'm busy at work. I don't get to ride my bike as much as I used to. And I think because of that, the time I do get to spend riding, I enjoy all the more. And also the time I plan my rides is a sort of part of it as well. So that's the sort of introduction really. I'll start by moving into January. There we go. So in January I rode, and this was I took a ride, and I won't dwell on this one, but it was around January time each year. Particularly in early January, I generally feel, having sort of spent, maybe I don't really languish at Christmas and sit down and eat. Well, actually, I do eat plenty and drink plenty at Christmas, but come early January, I sort of get a bit of an itch. And this ride from Otley to Massam and then back to Otley is one of my favourite rides. One of my favourite rides to do any time of year. But it's a lovely ride. There's a few great cafes at Massam, but it's a great ride to do to sort of get you going again. Really, it's 60 miles and it's about 1,600 meters of climbing. So there's enough in it to make you make you need to work hard really in the climbs and all the descents. And it also goes through a beautiful part of, well, it doesn't quite hit the Dales. It's on the edge of the Dales National Park. I went from north out of Otley and then through to down and up Nidderdale, out of Nidderdale, and eventually through to Massam. And those who know Massam, it was a very nice market town. And I came back heading west to skirt the edge of Great Whernside and then back down Nidderdale to climb one of my favourite climbs, Guy's Cliff, and then back through to Otley. So that was enough to get my legs going in January. And the picture here depicts the high point of hopefully you can see my mouse. The high point here, the high point of the ride entirely, and you get a beautiful view up to Great Whernside, up to the northwest, as you sort of crest the high point of the road, and you're about to drop steeply down into Nidderdale. Going the other way last year, 2019, was the route of the Women's World Championships, and this is where her name escapes. The world champion pulled away from the group and got her gap and held it all the way through to Harrogate. So it's quite a climb, and I descended that and then came back through to Otley. So that was my first ride. I won't dwell on it too much. So and it was a good winter ride. It was cold, it was clear. I mean, I did pick my days through the year with this book. I didn't really go out in the rain too much, which I was quite selective. Okay, through to February. And if in January I kind of went north and a bit west, and from Otley, the ground to the north certainly and west is much more sort of pastoral and moorland than those to the south, and that to the South Pennines. And so I kind of chose to do this ride the month after, because it really contrasted with my ride the month before, and so it was a ride down into the South Pennines, really, into a skirt. I wanted to cycle to the Peaceful, and I wanted to go to the bookshop in the Peaceful, and that was my objective for the ride, and just sort of take in a few more hills and some of the great the great roads that skirt the western edge of Bradford, and a place like Haworth full of history. So I went through to the Peaceful and came back, and one of the places I passed as I on my way out through towards Bingley, just above Bingley, is Dick Hudson's pub, which is on the west which side of, it's on the sort of southern side of Ilkley Moor, Rumbold's Moor, as it's also known. It's probably its main name, really. And Dick Hudson's was J.B. Priestley, who I've read a lot of recently in the past sort of 10 years or so. Was obviously a great West Yorkshire writer, and he wrote a piece. So there was an essay I read about his that where he describes walking up to the moor, onto the moor from Dick Hudson's. And I'm just going to start by reading a bit. Well, there's a combination of my words and J.B. Priestley. It seems a bit sort of cheeky to mix my words with J.B. Priestley's, actually, but I'm just going to do it anyway, so you have to forgive me. So this is JB. So the moors waited at the tram terminus, where the last mill chimney dipped behind the grey stone walls. The larks rose from the smooth grass and the ling and sang. And this is me when I'm riding. I reached the left turn of the moor road that would take me down to Bingley. On this corner sits Dick Hudson's, the pub on the edge of Rumbold's Moor. Originally on the old pack horse road between Bingley and Ilkley, Priestley's essay on the moors describes the pub as it was for him and his Airedale peers. And this is J.B. Priestley. If you live in Bradford, Shipley, Keighley, you kindle at the sound of Dick Hudson's. That is not merely because you have been so often refreshed there, but chiefly because you know it is the most familiar gateway to the moors. The moors of the West Riding folk are something more than a picnic place, a pretty bit of local countryside. They are the grand escape. In the West Riding, you have something to escape from, for industrial mankind has done its worst there. Back to me now. The whiteness of the pub gleamed in the low sunlight. On the moor side of the road, there is a small gap in the wall that takes you to the old road. These days, a muddy path up onto the moor, flagstoned in places, but mostly boggy, at least for most of the year. That's not to say it isn't inviting. Following the path quickly takes you to what feels like to be the middle of nowhere. At its highest point, the views over both the wharf and the Aire valleys are expansive. The 12 Apostle Stones circle is close by, situated at this high point, an apex high above the apex of where the wharf bends, marking the beginning of mid-Wharfedale as it heads south and east towards the Ouse. You can gaze into Upper Wharfedale and the heart of the Dales, which is surely why the stone circle was placed here. These uplands have had a pull for far longer than the time of the Industrial Revolution. So the moors. This is a cycling book, but the moors are very important to me, and I spend a lot of time running and walking up there as well as riding my bike up there. So J.B. Priestley and his writing about sort of the West Riding and the moors themselves have been a real form of inspiration to me over the past few years. So through on to March, and March again I chose my day for this. I was quite picky, and it was the year I'm writing about was 2018. And if you remember 2018 March, we got particularly snowy and cold early March, and so I was impatiently waiting to do my bike ride, and I ended up doing it quite late in the month. So as I've spoken, so what with March, I've got a number of different inspirations for this. And when I was looking at the map, I noticed that the White Horse of Kilburn, and I'd seen it before, the White Horse of Kilburn, which sits on the edge of the North York Moors, and you can see from the top of the Otley Chevin above my house on a clear day, just on the edge of the moors. And there's a brilliant hairpin road climb that goes up the side of the White Horse that I really wanted to cycle on. I'd been there walking the autumn before, and I thought I'll leave it to the spring, so come back here when it's a sort of nice sunny day and enjoy it. And so that was sort of sowed the seed really. And then I saw Edward Thomas. I don't know if any of you have read In Pursuit of Spring, which is Edward Thomas was one of our great poets who died in the First World War. And his book In Pursuit of Spring is all about him cycling from the centre of London to the Quantocks in Somerset over, I think, a 3-day period, Easter time, just before the First World War, in which he died. And it's an incredible book. It was just before he started writing poetry in earnest as well. And it's a very poetic book. It's in prose, very poetic and very inspiring. And so I kind of wanted to, In Pursuit of Spring was something that inspired me. In March, I wanted to sort of ride to spring, and I wanted to ride to the sea. So I'm just going to read another few sections. Edward Thomas inspired me to pursue my spring on my bike. For me, this meant riding across open country, away from the prevailing, often grey, weather from the northwest. I wanted to cycle to the sea. When I'd been planning my ride for the year, I knew I wanted to take in the far points of the map and to combine this with visiting some of the features of the landscape marked on it. In the eastern corner of the map is the southwestern corner of the North York Moors. The escarpment of the moors rise up from the Vale of York. On their western side, they can be seen for miles. On a clear day from the top of the Otley Chevin, you can see this escarpment, along with one of its significant features, the White Horse of Kilburn. The White Horse is around 70 metres high and 100 metres wide. Designed to be a peer to the White Horses in the south of England, it was funded by a local business and cut into the hillside in 1857. by a school teacher and his pupils. It is a striking sight, and there is a quiet road that forms a classic climb up the eastern side. These days, when I see white horses on hillsides, I always think of the artist Revilius. I was first introduced to his work about a decade ago, and in 2015 I visited an exhibition at the Dawe Picture Gallery in London. Famous for his landscape paintings and ceramic designs for Wedgwood, he was also a war artist and spent much of his time around the North Atlantic during the Second World War. For those of you who know the history of Revilius, he was also sadly killed this time in the Second World War. And I don't know, in my head, it kind of ties, Thomas and Revilius, and they were both around 40 when they died. The sort of sad loss of them, really. And anyway, I had a glorious ride cycling through to Scarborough, through to the North York Moors, and then beyond, then through Helmsley, and then to Great Derby Forest, and through there, and ended up at Scarborough and sat by the sea and had a cup of tea, and then got the train home. So it was a great day out. And I spent later that year in May, I spent a week in the North York Moors with my family and near Pickering. And I just want to sort of talk about this coincidence because writer, very awesome writer called Madeline Bunting, she wrote I picked her book in a secondhand bookshop in Pickering, and it's so Madeline Bunting's father, John Bunting, was a great sculptor, and I didn't know this when I cycled up White Horse Hill, but his family, he had a large family. He taught at Ampleforth College art, and he built a chapel to the lost soldier that's situated. I'll just show them up because it was such a coincidence. So the White Horse is, where's Kilburn? I imagine I'll be able to see it. The White Horse is just here, and if you move just along a bit, you get to. Oh goodness! Do you know what? Yeah, there's a place you can walk to it. That's it, Scotch Corner. Just at Scotch Corner, at the bend. If you ever wanted to wander along there, there's an old chap. He built this brick by brick, and inside of his sculptures. And it just so happened, completely coincidentally, as we were travelling home from our holiday, we thought we'd stop for a look at this chapel. And it just so happened that his son was there, who lives in London. It was just completely coincidental. He was there. And we got to look into this wonderful chapel at John Bunting's sculptures and all his work. A lot of his life's work was in that place. And it's clearly... And anyway, so I'm talking about this because it was such a coincidence, a chapel to the lost soldier. And I've been there thinking about two lost soldiers, two lost artists in Revilius and Edward Thomas. So I just want, if you ever get the chance to go to the chapel, I would. I think it's open twice a year. It's quite an amazing place in an amazing landscape. So so that was my March ride. And then in April, trains feature quite a lot in my book because I really do quite like either getting trains to the start of a bike ride and sort of travelling home, or doing the other way. So in March I travelled back from Scarborough on the train, and in April I did the opposite. There's a brilliant train I'm sure most of you will, if not all of you, will have heard of the Settle Carlisle line. There's a train, the early train that goes through Shipley, the Leeds to Carlisle train that leaves Shipley, which is the closest stop to my house, at about 20 to 6 in the morning, and so it gets you out in the Dales for early morning. And I've taken it quite a few times to get out, sort of to either with my bike or to run. And this time I got the early train on a lovely April morning to Kirby Stephen, and cycled home through to Otley, over. And I wanted to take in some of the classic Dales climbs, so I climbed over Lamps Moss out of Kirby Stephen. That was just like a shock to my system, having not really woken up properly. It's just straight uphill out of Kirby Stephen, and then dropped through to Swaledale, up over Buttertubs, which is just another classic Dales climb. And then I was tempted to stop at a cafe in Hawes, but I didn't. I carried on going over the Fleets Moss to back to the head of Wharfedale, and then back. So then I was back in the valley and followed the valley really all the way home, stopping at a very nice cafe at Hebden, which I stopped in quite a few times. So here are a few pictures that illustrate the ride. Kirby Stephen Station. This one here is the top of Buttertubs looking south towards, that's Ingleborough on the horizon. And this is Fleets Moss, it's a straight climb. It's one of my favourite climbs. I probably say that about pretty much every climb in the Dales, and I'll certainly say it later on. But yeah, it's a cracker. And then this is a little dipper. I stopped at a church at Hubberholme for a quick nosy, talking about JB Priestley. It was where he was interned, I think, if I remember correctly, and had a bit of a nosy round. And this little dipper was sat under the bridge, reflecting perfectly on the river. And I just quickly snapped a photograph and painted it later. So I don't know if it was quite a cool thing to see. So that was my April ride. And in May, the weather was different. It was pretty cold in April, and it really warmed up in May. If you remember, in 2018, we had that really, really hot spell that lasted really from late April through to late July, and it just seemed to get hotter and hotter. In May was certainly true. And in May, I headed out on my cross bike out to. I'll just show you the map, and then I'll come back to. So from Otley, I don't know how well you guys can see this on your screens. Hopefully it's okay. From Otley North, I headed out on the road, and then through to Blubber Houses, and then followed the Washburn Valley up. And it's funny, this old map, because obviously there's a reservoir here these days up at the First Cross Reservoir. Followed that up, and then got onto the Pockstones track to take me down through to close to Appletree Wick, and then through to Hebden, where I went to the Fine Cafe again, which I went to in April. And then I came back up, and I climbed north up onto the moors. I'm just going to come back here because one of my inspirations really for the whole book, as well as the map, was a book by two women called Ella Pontefract and Marie Hartley, Wharfedale. I picked this up. There's an awesome secondhand bookshop in Alnwick in Northumberland, and I picked this up. I don't know, sometimes it feels like in secondhand bookshops there's sort of books that have got your name on it, and like this one had my name on it when I walked in. I just saw it and sort of picked it up straight away. And both Ella Pontefract and Marie Hartley were great protagonists of the Dales and the sort of the history, the lifestyle, and the people of the Dales. Marie Hartley herself was actually ended up producing more books and more work than Ella Pontefract and with others as well. And since I've read this book, I've read others. It was great. She created the Dales Museum in Hawes, which is a great place to go. And she was also a great woodcut artist, as you can see. Probably not too closely here, but there's a picture of Hebden in an illustration to the book. And this chapter of the book that inspired me to go up to the moors was all about the old lead mines and the Yarnby lead mines up on the moor, up above Hebden and above Grassington. And some great tracks you can ride up there and go and explore the place. And I went up there on a hot summer's day and almost baked up there and dropped down to Coniston and then back through. And then for you guys who know the track, I came back over the sort of classic Bardon Moor trail up over Bardon Moor past Wood at Rilston, and then back through down to Bolton Abbey and home. It was a great ride out. And then in the winter time last year, because I've still not really explored the place, but I saw the chimney from a distance when I was riding, and I have done before. But I went up with my family for a walk. It was quite a cold day, so we were very wrapped up. And it's really worth an explore up there because the old mines are absolutely amazing, and there's this stunning flue that's still in place. So from this chimney here, it follows all the way. It sort of tracks all the way down the moor, and it's just the sense of history of the place. And it would have been such a busy place back when it was busy, and now it's just sort of steadily losing itself in the moor, and it's quite an atmospheric place. So that was sort of formed the inspiration for my ride, really, to head up and to see what Marie Hartley and Ella Pontefract saw and to sort of get inspired for myself, really. So that was my May ride on a hot summer day. And then June, I'm just going to start by reading from the book. Flaming June. The warm weather had continued all the way through May and then turned hot. My local off-road trails on the Chevin, Stainburn Forest and Ilkley Moor were bone dry and stayed so. I rode loads of them on my mountain bike. Well, they're still good when wet. The single track on the Chevin, the Otley Chevin, is at its very best in dusty conditions. I'd always planned that June's ride would be an off-road adventure, one of those rides that you would remember for a long time afterwards. Multi-day trips where you carry bivvy kit and sleep out have always been my favourites. It's something I did as much as I could before I had children, and has been curtailed since then. One of the things I've learned after having kids has been the sense of value and enjoyment in briefly going away to return to these kind of activities. They've both been enhanced. Mountain running in the Scottish Highlands is the same. I don't get to do it as much as I used to, so when I do, it's extra special. It was midsummer. I wanted to sleep out on the Dale's fell side, having ridden the whole day, to unpack my bivvy bag, rest on the hill, and then wake up and ride again the next day. On the Wharfedale map, there are so many options for rides like this. I also wanted to cross the map from south to north, off-road as much as possible. There is one established bike trail I could follow that would help me do this, the Pennine Bridleway. So, and with my friend MJ, who's a fellow sort of bike riding protagonist and runner, who lives in Otley as well, we met up early in the centre of Otley and cycled through to Bradford Station early on a Friday morning, and got a train to Hebden Bridge, where we picked up the Pennine Bridleway and then rode through the day along sort of the Pennine Bridleway through to Ingleborough Common, where we slept the night, and then on the fell, it was just a perfect night for it, and carried on. Woke up early the next day by skylark above our heads, which was very pleasant. Even at 5 o'clock, it was quite pleasant, and and we carried on through to finish our ride at Garsdale, and then I remember dozing for a bit, waiting for the train. It was still sort of probably lunchtime on Saturday. So it was a stunning ride, and one I remember for a long time. Really, the weather was baking, and I remember we had to make sure we filled up our water bottles at the pub in Clapham to make sure we had enough water for the day after, because it wasn't really a time of year to pick up water from the moor. It's just all dry. And so, but it's a real contrast as well in the landscape from the South Pennines. As I was talking about earlier, you've got the steep-sided moorland, and then the sort of the deep valleys, and the riding and there reflects it. And then as we cross the air gap between, it's really between the sort of the hills of Pendle and around Pendle and the flat land between Pendle and Long Preston. And then you sort of join the Dales, as you can see. I mean, this area here, this is the air gap. The change in the landscape is quite something. You move from sort of grit to limestone, and the landscape changes, and it's all great stuff. So and the Pennine Bridleway is a fantastic ride. I haven't actually ridden the whole of it, and it's something I mean to do, and I will do. But I haven't ridden the whole of it in one. I've ridden all of it in parts over the years, and it's a great trail. So it was a great ride, and one that will linger in my memory for a long time. Along with this curlew was on the moor near Wycoller, near Burnley, and it's stood on the wall for a while, but most of the time it was flying around our heads, warning us off because its brood was somewhere nearby. So we didn't hang around too long, but I did get a photograph so I could paint it afterwards. So that was June's ride, and July was, again, it was sort of more hot weather, much like the weather we're experiencing at the moment. And I stayed local for this ride. I did have a 100-miler planned for this July ride, but in truth, I had a lot of work on at the time, and I had to get it done. And I was, the Tour de France was on the TV, and I was. This is when I was running my own company. When you do things like that, you can watch the Tour de France and work at the same time, which is I was doing. But anyway, I was getting fed up with all this work and all this wonderful weather outside. So I did a 20-miler, sort of combination of road and trail out to Harewood, the Harewood House grounds, which are on the north end of Leeds, sort of following the line of the Chevin Escarpment, which is the steep-sided south side of Wharfedale Valley, and climbing up and down it quite a few times. And this some fantastic trails on my doorstep. I'm very lucky. The Bramhope Tunnel is quite a place. It's on the Leeds-Harrogate line, and it's this incredible Victorian monument, really. It's a tunnel mouth that is in the woods, hidden away from anywhere, and hasn't really got a footpath that goes by it. You need to sort of scrabble around to get to it. And it's a wonderful thing, that's built, and you know, the line's still in use, so I should imagine they maintain the tunnel mouth. But it's quite something to think of the work that went into it, and the craft, you know, the sort of the craft of the people who built it. And there it is, hidden away. I mean, that's a hidden gem to go and explore if you've ever got the opportunity, if you're around Wharfedale, Lower Wharfedale. And then I just caught the sunset as I rode home. I was sort of furiously climbing up the Chevin to get to the top to see the sunset, which I did. And I got home in the dark, which was good. So it was sort of a nice local ride when I was being frustrated and having to work too much on a sunny day. And in August, I wanted to sort of, you know, in August there's plenty. I mean, in many countrysides and sort of the country life around the UK in general, that the country shows, the annual shows are big things and big events, and sadly, obviously, I don't think any of them will take place this year. But when they do, they're great things. And as we've had children, great places to go to for entertainment for a day or half a day. And so I started early and cycled through up to the Malham show. I think it was late. I think it's always the bank holiday weekend in August, so it was quite late on in August. And I'm just going to do a bit of I'm going to read a bit. So because it is when I am actually coming to my most favourite climb in the Dales, as I was saying earlier, that Fleet Mosses is actually. So the way I went, I cycled through Motley on the back road that takes you through eventually up through to Kettlewell. I didn't actually go as far as Kettlewell. I came up Littondale and climbed out of Arncliffe. And I'm just going to do a bit of reading about that now. The climb out of Arncliffe is perhaps my favourite in the Dales, a hidden gem that challenges physically and rewards with a peaceful kind of beauty. Climbing the eastern side of Fountains Fell, riding up the steep-sided valley formed by Cowside Beck, and then over a high point after a cattle grid leads to a steep descent. Two hairpin bends that feel almost alpine in their nature lead to a small hidden valley formed by Darnbrook Beck, a stream that begins close to the summit of Fountains Fell. I feel a need to describe the topography of this place, as I think this is a large part of what makes it so peaceful, serene even. It took me by surprise the first time I cycled this road, and I felt this calmness of place every time since. After crossing Darnbrook Beck, the road climbs again, the final ascent of my ride. Cresting the brow of the fell side, I started my descent, passing Malham Tarn on my left, following the direction of the water that flows from it, to where the road drops away steeply, past the cove to Malham, the head of Airedale. The air begins here. It rises close to the tarn and then disappears under the ground for a few miles, travelling under Malham Cove before emerging at Airhead, just south of the village of Malham. Yeah. So I'd left the house quite early that morning and met my partner and our children at the show, and ate ice creams and pies and all afternoon and did various things. Had lots of fun, and so it was great to ride to it. It's one of my it's a favourite bike ride, that one. And here we come to September, and for those guys of you who know the Three Peaks cyclocross, it probably needs no introduction. So although I'll sort of introduce it a bit. The Three Peaks are the Three Peaks of Ingleborough, Whernside and Pennygent, and every September, the last Sunday in September, sadly not this year, there's a race around them, a 38-mile race that is just the best cycle race in the world. And as soon as I knew it existed, I wanted to do it, and that was probably when I was about 21, 22. Well, it was when I was 21, 22, and I just about doing the job I was doing, I just about afford to buy myself a cross bike, so I did that. It was too big for me, but I rode it anyway. And just to say that these pictures I painted have hopefully, I think Stephen Smith has joined today. So Stephen's done some amazing photographs of the peaks each year, and the one he did that inspired this picture here is kind of legendary these days. It's an incredible photograph climbing Simon Fell. I'll talk about Simon Fell in a minute. I'm just going to describe the race a bit in the context from the book. The race starts in Helmworth Bridge at 9:30 sharp. 500 cyclists leave from outside the pub, over the bridge, and then head north on the road towards Horton and Ribblesdale. I really don't like this start. Combine a large group of nervous, excited and fresh-legged riders with a race start where everyone wants to get into a good position, and you have a recipe for stop-starts and crashes. Most riders from a background of mountain biking and fell running with little experience of road racing. This includes me, although I do have 10 of these starts under my belt. I try to avoid the jostling for position and look forward to a few minutes later when we will leave the tarmac, join an off-road track, and soon after that, the open fell. And what a fell! After leaving the road at Southside, a few miles south of Ribblehead, the race route begins to climb on Ingleborough. It doesn't do this by a track or a path, but leads directly up the steep side of Simon Fell, one of Ingleborough's subsidiary tops. This is where the gasping for breath and burning calves really begin. You hook your bike over your right shoulder and often use your spare left arm to pull on tufts of grass or the fence line and the dry stone wall that also climbs the hillside to give yourself a little more momentum. I remember thinking that I might have bitten off more than I could chew the first time I approached this climb. Aged 23, I'd done the odd fell race, but nothing like this. Along with surprise was an interest and excitement, combined with a lurking, creeping dread at what I had just started. Would I be able to do it? If you look back at my racing history, you can see I always loved a challenge. My favourites were the races that had the highest chance of failure. In my mind, I looked at it if finishing was going to be easy, then where was the challenge? When I first heard about the peaks, I knew I had to do it. A couple of years into my first job, I got the money together to buy myself a cross bike and lined up the following September. I did a full Superman over my handlebars descending Ingleborough when my front wheel squelched into a bog that was deeper than I'd hoped, and I fell in love with the Three Peaks cyclocross. I hauled myself up Simon Fell, crossed the plateau at the top, and was heading off the fell southwest towards Ingleton. I still had to climb Whernside and Pennygent, but I knew that this was the race for me. I finished the race covered in mud, buzzing and looking forward to the next time. After that, I came back each year, apart from 2001 and 7, which was cancelled due to foot and mouth. This was a race I really wanted to win. I kept trying, sometimes getting close, ending up second and third more often than I care to mention. Yeah, so this is me. That was the cool thing about doing. So I did the race, and I hadn't done the race for a few years when I last did it in 2018. And I was all right there. I did it every year, and from age 23, and every year slowly learned about better ways of doing it and how I needed to get fitter. So that's me challenging cyclocross on the left there, quite young, just coming towards the end actually, thinking sort of quite relieved. I'm sure I was feeling quite relieved. And that me in the middle, after many times of trying, I was second and third quite a few times, to put it mildly, and I've got, I'm quite proud of that. I'm quite happy about it, but I really wanted to win that race, and 2008 was I was fitter than I'd ever been, and frankly I've ever been since. So it was sort of, it was my year, and I was quite determined, and so I won it. It's something I'm quite proud of. It's funny when you win something to come back to it and know you're not going to be anywhere near where you used to be. There's a vanity thing there when you just sort of, people retire from racing in part because of that, and I think probably the thing is the peaks is such an amazing race and such an amazing event. It's a shame to let that stop you doing it. So whilst I had those feelings in 2018, because I knew I was no way fit as I used to be and things like that, I still went and did it. And you'll see, and there's in the middle there's Joe, who's holding a bottle. Joe is the editor for this book and also supporting me on the peaks. And I think she's watching with a bottle of beer at the moment, so hi Joe. So the smile on my face says, and I think Mr. Sparkle is in the audience as well, who took the photograph, so thank you, Mr. Sparkle. I had the smile on my face says, really, I just loved the race and doing it, and I was very pleased to have gone back and sort of thrown the sort of feelings of not being so fast over my shoulder and got on with it. Really, it was superb. So yeah, and I'll do it again and again. I think there's an award if you do. Is it 20? I think it's 20 times, not 20. But anyway, I've done it 11 times now, so I've got a way to go, but I'll do it at least 20 times. And here's John Rawnsley, who created the Three Peaks Cyclocross and won the first edition way back when. John sadly died last year. And just in the months coming up to that, Joe and I spent some time with him and his wife Brigitte, who over the years have built up an incredible collection of Three Peaks, Three Peaks archive. This book on the right here is one example of that. So on the 50th edition, people got this together and gave it to John, and there's boxes and boxes of archive. And we spent time with John, talking to him about the race. We talked about the race a lot. We talked about his life and the things he did. He cycled the Pennine Way in one go. in 1976. He did the Bob Graham. He was a great triathlete, as well as winning the first edition of the Peaks and riding it a great many times. And we're now, Joe and I, in the early stages of writing a book that will be a full history of the Three Peaks as well. There's a story of John, really, because it's John's determination and his grit, and his determination to keep the Peaks as it is, which is a classic race with it's just a classic Yorkshire race. It's not commercial. It's in any way. It's just it is what it is. It's hard and it's beautiful, and John's kept it like that, and it will continue to be like that because people are determined to keep it like that for John. So the book will be about John and the race, and it's something that I'm enjoying working on already, and I'm very much looking forward to beginning to write in earnest with Joe. So I've not got too much time left, so I'm just going to not rattle through the next couple of chapters, but I'll sort of move a bit faster. So October, and this is when I ventured with my friend Richard to Lancashire, and because what I'd never done before, and really it was sort of one of the itches I wanted to scratch. I'd never actually cycled over the top of Bowland. I'd been into the Forest of Bowland, which is a wonderful part of the world, quite hidden. Well, it's not hidden away really, it's there for you all to see, but people sort of pile by on the way to the lakes or wherever and don't visit so much. And so Rich and I got a train to Lancaster and cycled back over the Forest of Bowland and the Trough of Bowland. And then one thing I'd never done as well is cycle over Pendle Nick. And so we cycled over the Nick of Pendle, which was great. And where would that be? That it's probably, it's here in, so I think this is the Trough of Bowland, this peak here. So it was a great ride out. Again, a train at the beginning of it. We cycling in Lancashire, which I don't know if a book that claims to be out in Yorkshire might be a bit cheeky. I've actually got a lot of my family come from Lancashire, so I've got quite a lot of roots in and around Birmingham and the Pendle area. So it was a really nice ride to do, really. And we came back over the Spine and the Pennines and dropped in. I almost wussed out at this point. I was getting a bit tired. I said to Rich, can we go an easier way back? Because we see, I just put this up thing here because the steepest climbs seemed to come at the end. I knew they were coming. We did them, and it was a grand ride. And it's really nice. I've really enjoyed working on this book. Well, just thinking about the ways you could combine trains and bike rides and therefore make linear routes. They're really good fun to do. And this one in particular was really, really good. Classic ride. And then for the last two months, I wanted to visit the end of the wharf and the beginning of the wharf. So unusually, although I kind of ventured east in March, unusually in November, I headed east. And it's funny, I headed east to where the wharf meets the Ouse. Just, where is it? It's just, hopefully you can see my mouse. Sort of, is it Coward? Which is just here. And I've got my thing in my little zoom icon thing in the way. But anyway, it's just here, and the wharf joins the Ouse at this around just here actually. This is just a picture of where the wharf joins the Ouse at Coward in the flatlands south of York. And it was quite an eye opener for me cycling east, because I've lived in Otley for 20 years, more than 20 years, and I always, whenever I go on my bike, I really generally go west. And so, east was kind of an anathema to me, really. But it was an absolute superb ride. I rode sort of along the sort of escarpment of the south side of the wharf. And it was quite a good read because there was a lot of fog in the valley. And I just sat above the fog all day until I dropped into the flatlands and it was still blue sky. And so I found the end, just as close to the end of the wharf as I could, and took this photograph, and this painting kind of depicts it. And then cycled up to York and got a sort of theme. I got the train home, and it was. And I spent a year working in York last year, and spent a lot. Certainly in the summer months last year, I cycled to York at least once a week, early in the morning. Early. I was at least leave the house at 5:30. It was a couple of 2-hour ride, and I just had some absolutely glorious rides doing that. And it sort of opened my, I sort of can get very set in my ways, and actually I've started to head east with my bike rides a bit more. And so it was kind of nice really to be to think about doing it as a result of looking for the end of the wharf, and then actually realising that actually it's quite a nice way to go. I should do it more often. So yeah, and so that was the end of the wharf. In December, I wanted to go to the beginning of the wharf, and there's actually, when I was doing my homework on this, there's actually two beginnings of the wharf. There's the Wharfedale Beck, which is here. So this is Wharfedale Chase. This is Ribble Head here. So this is Whernside here, and Ingleborough and Pennygent's down here somewhere. And so, the two becks. So we've got Glow Greenfield Beck and Wharfedale Beck joining together to form the River Wharf. So it was, again, I picked a good day for it, although it was quite cloudy to start with and very cold. I started at Ribble Head and picked up the Cam Head Road, and did quite a bit of carrying with my bike down the Dales Way to go past. I did actually go past Cam House at the time, and then down through to Low Greenfield and to Watershore to try and find the source of the wharf. And my last reading is just going to be from that. From this high point on Cam Fell, following the wharf, the path goes all the way to finish at Ilkley. Off the track, the ground was boggy, but at this height it was frozen solid. I rolled over it downhill, leading into the fell side I was traversing down to avoid my wheels going out from under me. I soon passed Cam houses, a handful of remote cottages set lonely on high on the hills, remembering a woodcut print of Marie Hartley's in Wharfedale that so beautifully illustrated the scene. After a mile or so, the ground levelled out and turned to tussocky bog that was not frozen solid. It was very easy to lose the path here, and I duly did so. I moved slower across the rougher ground, my bike hooked onto the crook of my shoulder. For a short while it would be cumbersome, slowing down my progress as I high-stepped over the tussocks and my feet got wet in the icy cold water that more than saturated the ground. Despite this harder going, I was more interested in finding the source of the river than trying to hold the path. All the signs were there, the ground flattening out, surrounded by higher ground every way but southeast, the direction in which the river begins its flow. Maybe I was looking for a needle in the haystack, but I like to think I stood in the source of the wharf. As I stumbled over the tussocks with my bike over my shoulder, I went into a bog up to my knees. I followed the line of this bog, and it became flowing water and then the beck. The ground I was walking on ever so slightly descended to the southeast. Humble beginnings, as is the case with rivers. A puddle in the beginning of nowhere begins a stream. Through its course, many others join it to form a mighty force. In my mind's eye, I could see the powerful Strid at Bolton Abbey and the weir in Otley when the river is in full spate. It all begins with this. So from Watershore, like I say, I think I found the source. I carried on through to Beckhamons and then followed the old road, which eventually turns to a dirt track, and back through to Ribblesdale, and then followed the road back up to Ribble Head. And that was, so it's just a short and sweet mountain bike ride of 15 miles that sort of ended my year really. And it was a great year's riding, and it was a wonderful. I mean, I hope those of you who read the book have enjoyed it, because I mean, I hope you get a sense of the fact I very much enjoyed working on it. So thanks everyone for listening. I've got a few things just to mention before we're going to have some question and answers in a minute. I'm sort of keeping to reasonable time. Just to start with, so I run a little publishing house called Little Pete Press that published Cycling Year last year. And I've been working closely with my good friend Richard Seep since last autumn on his book, all about his and his son's Tom's incredible cycling adventures. Last year, for those who know the Tour Divide, Rich and Tom went and cycled the Tour Divide, which goes from Banff in British Columbia through, following the length of the line of the Continental Divide of the Rocky Mountains as much as possible to end up at Antelope Wells in New Mexico. I mean, I've got some vague knowledge of the Tour Divide, but not like they do. They finished it. So the book's going on Kickstarter probably next week if with a fair sale win. So keep an eye out for that if you're at all interested. It's a bit of a cracker of a story. And then just to end with, so we published 2 books last year, both by me, so it's going to be quite refreshing to publish a book by someone else this year, by Rich. I'm also working on a book with Jeff that should be out later this year if Jeff pulls his finger out and finishes his writing. And that's called Traceless. So if you enjoy mountain running, that's combination of poetry, art, and writing. So, and it's all about the Lake District. I've been inspired by the Jerry Charney round in the Lake District. So that'll be out in the autumn. But these two books, High Inspiration, which is all about mountains and how they inspire me, and running around the Tour de Mont Blanc, and the book I've just spoken about, Cycling Year. They're available. You can get them at the Little Peak website, at my website, heatherdawe.co.uk. You can support your wonderful local independent bookshop who needs, support right now, like a lot of small businesses do. So you can buy or order it from them. And if you want to get in touch about anything, there's my contact details, and that's where you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. So Jeff, I think we're ready to start. If there's any questions or anything, everyone, just to thank you for your time, and like I say, hopefully this has gone okay for you guys. And any feedback about these things are always wonderful, because I think webinars are, I don't know, in many ways it's sort of quite, it brings people closer, because anyone can get, who can get online, can join, but at the same time they're quite distant. So anyway, hopefully it's gone okay. So Jeff, are there any questions or?
Before I go on to the questions, yeah. There's an input from a great friend and colleague of mine from the Rural Writers Institute, Nicola Pitchford. Hi, Nicola.
Hi, Nicola.
The school teacher who led the making of Kilburn White Horse was my great uncle.
Oh wow!
So there's a connection.
Yeah,
for you.
Very much. Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, what an incredible, because it's an incredible place, and that White Horse is amazing. It's very, it's like I say, you can see it from the top of the Chevin, which is some distance away, on a clear day. So we always keep an eye out for it.
And a couple of inputs from Philip Doherty.
Okay, hi Phil.
Loving the talk, Heather. Inspired me to leave the Surrey Hills and come up to your beautiful
Well, you're very welcome up here, Phil.
And a question from Philip to follow on from that. Do you do much other riding through the months? Can we get a copy of this recording? I'd love to show the family and friends.
Yes. So yes, thanks, Phil. So yeah, what I should have said at the start, although it's only been me and Jeff speaking, is that we've been recording this and we're going to put it on YouTube. So, and what we'll do after this, and I'm not going to spam you very much with Eventbrite emails, but we will send a link out to the YouTube video afterwards, in a few days when I've got it sorted. So thanks. Hopefully that helps.
Okay, and the other question from Philip: do you do much other riding through the months? Are you a winter as well as a summer?
Oh yes, I'm very much a winter rider. And the thing is, I obviously at the moment I'm not doing very much commuting. So through the year, most of the time, commuting is always actually, even when I was racing lanes, it kind of formed the backbone for my training. Really, I did some speed work and stuff on it, and that often got me through racing and stuff. And so commuting, I road ride a lot. As much, I don't ride as much as I used to, but I certainly, as much as I can these days. And at the moment, I'm having a great, well, I shouldn't say that, life's very different at the moment. I'm not travelling to Leeds every day where my office is, and I'm getting an early ride on the Chevin or an early run on the Chevin in the morning, which is all very pleasant. So I'm not complaining about that.
Great. One input from our mutual friend, Joe Faulkner.
Hello, Joe.
Thanks very much, Heather. Really enjoyed stories and Dale's perspective, especially Rombold's and Dick Hudson's. Brings back memories of my Ilkley college days and working at Bolton Abbey. Is the Pennine Bridleway good riding generally? It seems to have passed me by.
Yeah, it is. It's it's double track. I'm not going to call it a gravel ride, although some people would. I'm not really a gravel rider, but I'm really judging gravel riding. But anyway, it's a double track. It's not really single track, although there are bits of single track in places. It's solid, so it holds up really well in the winter and in the rain, which you do get some rain in the Pennines. Yeah, it's a great ride, and it's certainly a decent. It's plenty of hills in there, so. Yeah, I really enjoyed it, the section we did, and I've done the Mary Tony loop a few times, and then riding up north around Kirby Stephen Way, that's all good, and the stuff through the Dales is really good. Yeah, I'd recommend it for sure. There's plenty of other good trails, obviously, as you know, Joe, in the Dales, but it's a good ride, and it was really lovely to bivvy on Ingborough like we did.
Great stuff. Jill Rimus put a question up, Heather. What type of cycle racing do you do?
I don't. I mean, I'm never say never. I'm sure. I probably. I mean, I'll do the peaks again. So what sort? I never used to really road race very much. I mean, I'm actually quite old these days, and it's women's road racing. It's tough. But 2 decades ago, there wasn't much of a scene. And these days, it's completely different. And the incredible thing these days, Otley in Yorkshire is a great centre for cycling in the UK. And there's so many more women on the road just cycling now, out and about. Than it was unusual when I was younger. Not really old, but yeah. So there's much more of a scene now for road racing and stuff. And so maybe if I was racing now, if I was younger, I'd be in that a lot more. But I used to do a lot. I mean, like a lot more fell racing, running. Mountain bike racing, but not circuits, more the sort of navigation stuff, and then that turned into adventure racing, and I always did the 3 peak cyclocross. So and that's a special race. That it's a funny race. It's a sort of combination of different kinds of fitness. So and also just kind of styles of riding. It's a great race. So yeah, I mean, more just sort of mountain riding has always been my favourite stuff. So if there's any races there, then I'll go and do those.
Oh, we don't appear to have any other questions, Heather. So I'll close.
Okay. Well, So that's. I think we're just about to time, aren't we? As well. So
yeah.
Well, just to say thanks very much for coming along, everyone. It's always these webinar things. You sit here and you sort of talk to your computer screen and sort of think, I wonder if anyone else is listening. But and you just keep talking. But thanks very much, and hopefully you enjoyed it. Thanks very much for your time, and we'll be doing another one of these. So but about something else at some point. So please do keep an eye out. Thank you.